What's up guys, Phoenix here. This video is going to be another Deck Doctor video on a subscriber suggestion deck, and this time it is going to be on the Speedroid Gusto deck that I've been playing in some videos and some games on my channel in the past, couple of days. I've put up a couple of videos where I play against at least 2 different matchups per video, and so if you're interested in seeing those, definitely go check those out. This was a subscriber suggestion by Eric Godwin, and he was just very adamant about me trying this out, simply because, I do love Gustos. It's one of those archetypes that I've always really enjoyed. I've had very much a history of enjoying this archetype, and ultimately this deck plays in a little bit more of a different fashion because of the advent of Speedroid Takim Tomborg. This card is absolutely great for the deck because it allows you to special summon it when you control any wind monster, so literally any Gusto card, and then you can tribute it and go into Tri-Eyed Dice, which gives you more tuner access, more tuner fodder, more synchro fodder, and then also Tri-Eyed Dice functions as a Necro Gardener in your graveyard, which is actually just really good on its own as well, because it allows you just multiple different options for what you're going to be doing throughout your play lines, because it actually allows your freeze plays to be extended, stuff like that. Just little tiny things and details that actually just really stack up in your favor. But anyway, I'm going to be doing a Deck Doctor for this. I'm going to be changing it around, changing the things that I feel like are not optimal, are not the best, and just replacing them with things that I think overall help the deck's theme, which is to win games, ideally through freeze OTKing. But before I do so, I'm just going to take this a little bit of time to say, if you have your own deck list that you would like for me to play or critique, and it is TCG legal, I cannot stress that enough, TCG legal is all I want to mess with for this. You can send the deck list to my Facebook fan page. There's a link to that in the description of this video, as well as every other video I've done in the last year or so's time, and you can send it to me in that form, and if it catches my eye, catches my fancy, it will definitely be something that I would be more than happy to actually play for some videos and do a Deck Doctor on. But it has to be something interesting. Don't just send me something like just a variation of a Satel deck. Like a Satel Demise deck, and expect me to want to play it. No, keep it interesting, yet not too out of potential to be good. If you're gonna send me something like Skull Servants, well, one, I've already done that before, so I probably won't do it again. But if you're gonna send me something that's absolutely tier 7 garbage, I'm not gonna do it. But if you send me something that actually has potential to do things cute and steal games like this, even though this isn't necessarily any definable by any tier in terms of a deck, it can steal games because it does have a very solid win condition against most decks in the metagame. But anyway, that's enough rambling. I'm going to talk about one thing before I start changing things around, and that is in the videos that I played with this deck, I made it very adamant that I felt Whirlwind of Gusto was 100% better than Blessings for Gusto, and that I 100% didn't understand why Blessings for Gusto would be included over Whirlwind. That was because I haven't read this card in a year, plus, and I forgot that this card says if you control no monsters. But from an effect-to-effect standpoint, this card is strictly better than Blessings for Gusto, but it is more situational, that meaning you can't freeze OTK you can't extend your freeze OTK with this card. Now you can get your freeze OTK started with this card very easily, very handily. And you could ideally do the exact same combo, this freeze OTK combo with this card over this card, but ultimately there's no real way to search Gusto cards, so there's really no reason to include this card in your deck, because Call of the Haunted would just be strictly better in almost every situation. 1, because there's more of it. 2, because it requires less cards in your graveyard. It requires whatever card you're reviving, not 3 Gustos, and just all that sort of nonsense. But anyway, that's enough blathering. Let's start changing this list. So the first cards I'm taking out are Blessings for Gusto, because I think the card is absolutely terrible, and 2 copies of Magic Cylinder, which I also think is terrible. Now, if you're looking for a burn card, I completely understand, but you shouldn't be doing Magic Cylinder. It's targeting, so it doesn't work against Cosmo Dark Planet and Dark Destroyer and Forerunner and stuff like that, so that's a first problem. Second problem is it's a battle trap, which is very unfortunate. You're just gonna have stuff done to you before that time, so if you're looking for a burn card to play just to extend your freeze range or make your freeze range easier to achieve, then you can just play something like Secret Barrel or Just Desserts, and that's easily more justifiable than playing Magic Cylinder, because Magic Cylinder ultimately is it's got way too much working against it in the current format. But honestly, I don't think you need any burn cards at this point, because the attack point ceilings of all these monsters in the game right now are so incredibly high anyway, that usually any freeze OTK, even with 1 monster, is usually enough. Especially Monarchs, there's 2800s everywhere. Odd Eye's Pendulum Dragon. You can suicide into Odd Eye's Pendulum Dragon, and you would normally take double damage, but now your opponent takes double damage. There's all these different things in the format that just make it really easy for you to just freeze OTK now. Like, Dark Destroyer is 3k. Like, all these numbers are just huge, but anyway. We're going to start adding cards now. And the first card that I think should be a mandatory 3 of a Speedroid Terratop. If Takatamborg makes this deck amazing, and makes this deck better, then why would you not max out on the card that searches Takatamborg that can also just be a free special summon from your hand when you control no board? It makes no sense to me. Takatamborg is great for this deck in terms of what it does, and playing more copies of it only makes more sense. If you're special summoning this card from your hand, even if you're not using it immediately, it is still another combo piece that you can utilize. You can go straight into a rank 3 or a level 6 Synchro without normal summoning, which is very key. You can go special like Terratop, get Takatamborg, tribute it into Triad Dice, and make Stardust Charge Warrior draw a card, get a quick +1 before you've even normal summoned. That's actually just huge. You can do the same sort of thing with Gram Pulse, which also plays around Rivalry of Warlords, because Terratop and Takatamborg and Gram Pulse are all machines, and Gram Pulse allows you to just out Rivalry of Warlords if that's something that's becoming a problem to you in the game, because, you know, the Gustos are all different types. It's Wing Beast and Psychic. So there is that you can utilize to your advantage as well. Ultimately, it just extends the play range of your deck, and I don't understand why this wasn't included in the original draft. This card is absolutely amazing. I think it's a mandatory 3 of, but even I could have understood if he'd play like 2 or 1 of it, but none of it? I just don't quite understand, basically. But that's it for the Speedroid engine. I'm not going to change anything else about it. These 8 cards seem fine. There's argument you can make for Red-Eyed Dice, but Red-Eyed Dice, if it boosted the level of anything, it would be an immediate addition in here. But it only boosts the level of Speedroids, meaning that it's only going to be usable when you're doing a Terratop play, which is something I didn't want to go for. Triad Dice is just better simply because like 3 is the number you're usually going to be trying to hit, because you're trying to make freeze. So you're going to be combining this with like Pilica and stuff like that, or you're going to be combining it with Terratop to make like Stardust Charge Warrior, stuff like that. And so you're going to be using it in that regard, but it's also a Necrogarden type card, which is actually just something that has come up in the past in my testing of this deck. Yeah, it's just something that it just seems better. Because Red-Eyed Dice, like I said, can only make Speedroid monsters go up in level, and thus that means only Terratop, because you're usually going to be summoning it with Takatamborg's effect, and you can only special Takatamborg once per turn in the way that you do, so there's that. But other than that, time to start changing the Gusto lineup, or just the monster lineup in general. Ghost Ogre, I don't really like this card right now. I understand why it's here. It's an extra target for E-Telly, it's a tuner target for E-Telly, but honestly, the card just seems really weak to me right now. The only matchup it really shines against is Pendulum. But even then, this deck doesn't necessarily have that huge of a problem against Pendulum, as long as you're able to just put a freeze on the board very quickly. The only problem that you're dealing with against Pendulums is like cards like Apex Avion and Kieran, and, you know, Ghost Ogre isn't helping you there because it's just not doing anything for you. So, honestly, if you're going to play Ghost Ogre, I would side them for the Pendulum matchup at best. But like as it stands, nah, I'm not. This card's not going to be in the main deck. But what we are adding is we're going to add a second Cam Serenity of Gusto, if I can actually type like not a retard. This card, I think, is very much a minimum 2 of, simply because, one, you can float into it off your freeze plays, and that's actually, you know, pretty critical, because sometimes you're able to make a rank 4 there at the end of it as well, utilizing, you know, like Gusto Falco or something like that, or Falcos, I guess its name is. But having 2 of this makes it infinite, and that's actually very key for this kind of deck. You want to be able to always have resources, and once the first cam is gone, the fact that you would have to add it back off of the seconds freeze, or like seconds freeze, off of freeze in general, or call the Haunted It back was something I didn't like. So I think this card is just minimum 2 of. I don't think 3 is the right number by any means. I think this card clogs at 3. I think it clogs at 2. But I feel like 2 is the absolute minimum you want to be running, because as soon as one is in the grave, the other one shuffles it back. It's an infinite advantage cycle, and it's going to reward you in those longer games that you play if you do find yourself playing longer games. Things that need to be considered. Second change. Cutting Winda, Priestess of Gusto to 1. This is the worst floater out of them because it has to be killed by your opponent. You can't suicide it, so that's a thing. But also, as well, is that you rarely float into this card anymore because of the fact that Pilica does exist. This card can very easily just exist at 1 just to be an option to float down into, simply because of the fact that, like, you are going to want it for the option, but you're most of the time going to be summoning Pilica anyway. because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be going, your floating string is going to go, your floating string can normally go Guldo into Winda into Eagle, and then that cycle can continue itself, but then Eagle can break off into Cam if you know your opponent can't kill anything else, and you can recycle cards. Or, more typically, instead of going into Winda, Eagle can go into Pilica, and then Pilica can revive Eagle or Guldo. That's actually very key. That basically replaces Winda's point in the chain, in the floater link, but like you just kind of want it there as an option as well, because sometimes you don't want to float into your Pilica immediately. But you do have to float into a non-tuner. So it's just there for the one card option, but it is the worst of the floaters. It's the 100% worst one. Like, Kamui gets you access into the best floaters, so you have 9 of the good floaters. You can afford one of the bad one, but ultimately, almost every time Eagle dies, you're either going to be trying to float into Cam or Pilica. The only times you're not going to be doing that is when it's only advantageous to go into Winda if your opponent has tons of attacks left on you. But you can still wall tons of attacks with Pilica. For example, if you had a Guldo on your board and your opponent's attacking you with 5 monsters and none of his cards can negate floater effects, your Guldo, off the first attack, will float into Eagle. Off the second attack, Eagle will float into Pilica, which Pilica will bring back Guldo. And so that blocks 2 more attacks. So off the third attack, Pilica dies. Off the fourth attack, Guldo dies. And then off the fourth attack, Guldo summons Eagle. And then off the fifth attack, Eagle can summon Cam. Like, it's a very simple little string that you go down, and it floods your graveyard with monsters that you can actually just use to Cam, allowing you to gain advantage, stuff like that. But yeah, this is the floater string that I like the best, and I'm going to move these up here just because they are part of the floater line, and I want to keep these down here. I'm very OCD on how I organize decks on DEVpro, but anyway. So, Triple Kamui, this card is like one of the best cards you want to open with going first, because you can set it, you can flip it, you can immediately synchro summon into like a 5 or a 3, potentially, depending on what you want to go into, because this flips, gets Guldo. Usually having Kamui plus like E-Tele or just Pilica straight, usually E-Tele is just better though. E-Tele is 100% better, because like you could just go into like Librarian, into Freeze, and then normal summon the Guldo, so like that's huge, but ultimately, it's just a very strong card that you really want to open with, so that's why you play 3 of it, and it's also just extra copies of these cards because it summons them from deck when it's flipped. So it essentially functions as a floater as well, even though it is Gravekeeper's Spy. But continuing on down the line, Forbidden Dress. This card is absolutely like not worth it in my eyes. I understand kind of why it's here, but the only like favorable application I can see with it is like if your opponent has a Cosmopilot on the board and they tag it out, you have to immediately play this card targeting your Freeze, and then your opponent summons Dart Destroyer if that's what they were aiming for, and then Dart Destroyer can now no longer target this Freeze. Like, that's the only thing that I can see that would be favorable there, but even then it's not that favorable, because at that point your opponent can just target Dart Destroyer itself and float down into like Dark Witch, and that would be a very big problem, because that means it's going to negate your floater. So that's the issue. The only thing you could do to like benefit yourself at that point is if your opponent is at such a low amount of life that you can attack with the weakened Freeze and then attack with the floater, and they're at less than 1,000. That's the only way you're going to get out of that situation. Cosmos are such a hard matchup anyway. I wouldn't start dedicating cards like Forbidden Dress against that matchup. And Forbidden Lance also, it's just not that great as a card. Like, you'd rather just have back row removal. You'd rather just have the extra Twin Twister. Because if anything, like, this just makes it easier for you to go second, especially against back row. Like, you could have Twin Twister plus Guldo plus like Pilica or E-Tele, and that'd be really good. Because like you'd just be able to make a Freeze play. Stuff like that. It gets even better if you have like Terratop or Taketomborg. Like, there's multiple different things that just start snowballing you there, to where you can actually go second and actually do a Freeze OTK on your first turn. And that's something that like Twin Twister helps you provide. But back row is not really that big of a problem in this format anyway, and even if you are dealing with back row, it's usually stuff like Floodgates or Solemn Strike, Solemn Warning, or like, yeah, just like Floodgates in general, like Emptiness and like Rivalry and stuff like that. Stuff that Lance does nothing against. You're not going to really run into Drowning Mirror Force, which is the most popular Mirror Force right now, because of the fact you're never going to be attacking directly. The entire point of this deck is to attack into your opponent's monsters. Storming Mirror Force you could play around by putting Freeze into defense mode, and oh no, they put your floaters back into your hand. Whoops. Like, I guess you just get them next turn. Like, there's all these different things that go into play that make Lance just like really subpar this format. I could have seen using it like in a previous format, but as it stands, I don't think the card is necessarily worth playing at all. I feel like it's just better. There's just better options in the main that you can explore. But speaking of those options, every time I play this Gusto deck, there's always 3 Call of the Haunted in it. This card is amazing. This card is an OTK extender. There's all these different things that this card does while I sort around with my OCD. There's all these sorts of different things that this card does. You can call the Haunted Pilicas and then go into freeze and then, you know, have a normal summon there. Like, that's huge. Like, if you have Goldo Pilica in grave, you can call the Haunted Pilica, get Goldo back. You can do that on, like, your opponent's in phase as well, so it's even stronger. And so, like, you can go into freeze. This freeze can add back either Pilica or the Goldo, and then you can just summon Goldo if you added that back and attempt to OTK them. Stuff like that just kind of leads you into your different play lines and your differing play lines that actually just benefit you the most. So that's something that you definitely want to be working with. But continuing on, the last card in the deck is just going to be a trap that we're adding, Solemn Warning. I don't want to add like something like Emptiness or something, because it just ultimately would just contribute to your game plan being hurt as well. Specifically, whereas these cards actually just like work pretty well for you. I didn't want to flood it with traps. I mean, there's already max C for when you go second, stuff like that. There was a thought that I had of like cutting these completely and just playing only 3 calls as the traps and just playing triple max C and 2 Valor in the main. But ultimately, I feel like these are fine as well. I mean, usually you do want to leave your opponent's monsters on board, so that's where these cards do kind of conflict with the overall game plan. But ultimately, I didn't have enough time to test the theory that I wanted to play, which was triple max C and 2 Valor, or even just double max C, triple Valor. And I'm just playing these instead, just because they are really strong cards and they're really good against Pendulum, which can overrun you sometimes. So like there's the thing there. Typically, you do just like use Strike on like Dwellers and shit that's gonna negate your Floater String, but that's about it. But for the extra deck, we're gonna start changing this. Tim Tempo and Musa Rhythm. These cards aren't good. So they definitely are getting cut. There's no reason for 2 Crystal Wings, and there's no reason for 2 Clear Wings. That just seemed like extra space that this entire Wind extra deck, except for like Armades, was being filled with. Like, this entire extra deck was just Wind except for Armades. And you've got to understand something, is that, yes, a lot of these cards like impart restrictions on what you're going to be making, but that doesn't mean that you aren't going to be able to structure that in different ways to actually make it just good for you. But, so, High Speedroid Puzzle is getting cut as well, because in terms of a level 4 that you can make, there's just, like, better options that I believe that you have access to. Strictly, like, stuff like Digusto Falcos, even though, like, I'm not sure which one is strictly better. This one doubles its attack, so it becomes 26, but this one can actually go a bit higher than that, because as long as you have it on the board when it's summoned, it goes to 2k. If you have 2 Gustos, it goes to 26. But then all Gustos gain the attack. So I just think this card is overall just better. Old Entity Hastor is getting cut. Card's not good, period. At all. Like, it's so situational to actually play it. Like, just, let's just not subject ourselves to this. But Digusto Falcos, this is literally only here because you do just want to make cards like with Pilica and Eagle sometimes. And it does facilitate rank 4 plays with like Cam. And it's a card that can be shuffled back with Cam. Or actually no, this has to go from main deck, right? So you can't shuffle it back with Cam, but it is just another card that you can make. It's also a Gusto card, which is sometimes actually just relevant. Just like all these different things, all these different nonsensical things that I say that comes out of my mouth. But anyway, continuing on, I've been talking a lot about Grand Pulse, so this card is getting added. Grand Pulse is getting added because, like I said, if you're playing against like something like Rivalry or something, you can go special Takatumborg and Terratop, and you can just go straight into Grand Pulse because they are all machines. So there's that. Another card, Levier. Levier is a card that I don't see myself making often, but I want it there for the option. If stuff starts getting banished, there's that as the option that I want to be able to get it back. Or this can banish itself as a Necrogardna, so having that as the option as well seems pretty damn cool. But even then, like most of the time you're making Levier, if you're making Levier with anything, it would be like Terratop Takatumborg, and that's like the only time you'd be making Levier where you wouldn't just be using Pilica and be able to make us freeze anyway. So like there is that. Otherwise, but like stuff sometimes can get banished off utility, like Pilica can get banished off utility if you're trying to use it to block, and then Levier can bring it back. So there is that. You just want these options. And then for the lone rank 4, we're going to be playing a Lightning Chidori, because it is possible for you to like float into Cam and then make Falcos, and then you can make Lightning Chidori and bounce a few cards. It's there for options. You have room in this extra deck. Most of the time, 90% of the time in this extra deck, you're only going to be summoning Freeze. But having the option is definitely not a bad thing. Now, other card, TG Hyper Librarian. You want this here for one of your wombo combo plays, which I talked about a little bit earlier, which is having Kamui plus E-Tele or Pilika. Kamui, if it survives, if you're like protecting it with Striker Warning or whatever, it's one of the only cards that I like Advent protecting with Striker Warning. During your next turn, you flip it, you get Guldo, you synchro into Librarian, and then you summon your Pilika, whether it's by E-Tele or it's normal summon, and then you make freeze. You draw a card and you add a card back from your graveyard to your hand. Now, if it was off of an E-Tele that the Pilika was summoned and you haven't used your normal summon yet, that's very strong, because you get to add back the Guldo, you get to normal summon it, you get to do a lot of damage, and then you also get to just draw a card. Like, it actually just gives you a lot of different cards. But then you also have the option of doing Librarian plus Stardust Charge Warrior, which is a card that is also going to be included in this deck. Stardust Charge Warrior is actually really neat, as I've already said. It makes your Taka Tomborg play without Gustos into something that actually draws you cards. Like, you want the +1s, you want these cards. These are things that you do, in fact, want. Now, last change, Armades. Card is not relevant in any like way, shape, or form. It was definitely relevant way back in the day. It's not relevant anymore. It's definitely way too weak to do anything. So instead, we're just going to be changing it out for just another card that's like not really as relevant either, but like it is here as an option, and that is the form of Daigusto Emerald. Now, Emerald is here just because like Cam can't put back your Gustos into the main deck. So like if you do run out of freezes, now you can add freeze back off freeze, but having this in your extra deck as an option just seems like a very much more valid way to go about things, because it just allows you to put back the this freezes and you're capable of going forward there. It also gives you another draw, stuff like that. Ultimately, this is the like thing that I would just make the deck to look like. This is, if I were to play this deck right now, it's something. It would more than likely look like this. Simply because it's very to the point. It does things the way you want it to. Creature swap is actually pretty damn good. Cannot pretend that it isn't. And like just ultimately, yeah, I'm very pleased with this list, and I'm going to be playing it for some future videos coming out shortly. So if you're interested in seeing this deck being played, definitely stay tuned for that. But that's basically been my take on this Speedroid Gusto deck. These are the changes that I want to make to it. These are the changes I have made to it. And this is how I feel like the deck is going to need to be played to yield a better performance, I guess, if I could say. It's definitely not going to probably yield amazing results, but as long as it yields a better performance, that means my time was not wasted. But I digress. That's going to be it for this video. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe to all the nonsense you usually do. Links are in the description, as usual, to my Facebook links if you want to check those out. Connect with me, chat with me, whatever. That's what they are there for. As I've already said, if you want to send in your TCG legal deck list for me to possibly do a playing and critiquing on, then definitely go for it. Send it to me there in a message form to the fan page, not my personal page. If you want to support me, clicking ads on my videos and disabling ad block when you view my videos is the best way to do so. Helps me make money, and there's no reason to lie to you guys about that. If you have an ad block enabled, if you can take a few seconds out of your day, disable the ad block, click an ad or two, put the ad block back on when you're done, and then you just showed your support very easily, very quickly, and you've ensured that I'm going to keep making videos of this type and quality if that's what you like to see. Or they might get better and improve in the future. Who knows? But things aren't going to be changing massively. At least I don't think so. But other than that, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. And as always, guys, take care.